Greetings, folks. Cosmic Mystic here. I want to talk about another one of my favorite subjects. Two of my favorite subjects, but we're going to talk about two of my favorite subjects at one time. Really, three of my favorite subjects at one time. We're going to talk about, these three subjects are robots, artificial intelligence, and aliens. Robots, artificial intelligence, aliens. Right? So, it doesn't get better than that. So, here's the deal. I put out a little video. I was just playing around. I like to make little movies, little, faux documentaries. And, that when we're talking about aliens, not hyperdimensional beings, but like aliens that live in this plane on another planet somewhere, alien intelligence, intelligent aliens, that it's more than likely our first encounters. Just consider the possibility that our first encounters, our first contact, will not be so much with organic aliens, but with robots or artificial intelligence. Now, here's the thing. Now we can also get into, okay, what's an organic alien versus an artificial intelligence? Well, I mean, let's talk about us, human beings. Let's say that, we're creating computers and, maybe we get into quantum computing and we get into, we start, who knows, let's say 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, we've created, or let's say 20 years from now, we've created sentient, self-aware machines. We engineered and created sentient, self-aware machines. Now, the way I think that would happen, actually, is I think that what we call evolution is a principle of nature. I think that it's a principle of nature that it happens. There's all kinds of ways of looking at it. Because one way, let's say you talk about machine learning, and you talk about machines that learn and optimize, and algorithms that optimize their processes, that they learn from their environment, their processes optimize, and they perform a task better, and they improve in performing a task. So people look for these learning algorithms. And maybe one thing you could see maybe evolution, or the way DNA, evolution is a meta set, is a meta case, evolution at large. Let's say if you believe in evolution. So if you believe, we went from single-celled organisms to multi-celled organisms to, little fishes to, reptile or amphibious type creatures to human beings, over a period of millennia, that this is a meta set or a meta case of DNA, of the adaptive machine learning, the adaptive algorithmic process of DNA. And the DNA itself is a product of a adaptive evolving process that is a very core process of nature, just like gravity, or like nuclear forces, a very core process of nature of adaptation, of learning and adaptation. So, there's schools of thought like complexity science, people like John Holland and Murray Gell-Mann, and I forget the famous complexity scientists, but that study at a core level the force, the opposite of entropy, where information or patterns are maintained, patterns that resist or maintain against chaos, or order, that these patterns of order that maintain against order. And so that at a very deep, so let's say hypothetically, I'm doing a lot of pseudoscience. We're just talking, folks. It's just imagination, just talking. We're using our imaginations. So let's start at crystal formation. So, I can't explain to you how crystals form, but the whole concept that these molecules, lock up and form these patterns, and that some people feel that maybe DNA is some sort of set or evolution or next step in crystal formation. And then, they could have gone many different ways. That what we know is DNA, that is the foundation of most life on Earth, could have gone many different ways. But then that process of DNA, so you got people like, what is it, Richard Dawkins, the selfish gene, where life and evolution, it's not about us, it's about the DNA. And it's all about the DNA. It's all about the DNA's mission and pursuit to maintain this pattern, to maintain this order, to adapt and resist entropy. And in that the processes get more complex and complex. So that's where cellular organisms are created. And it could have gone different ways. Life didn't have to be a cellular organism. It could have gone different ways, So, bear with me. We're going to go back to our original thought. So you got these cellular organisms, single cellular organisms, and they increase in complexity, and to multicellular organism, the process of evolution. Then here you get us. All right. So if we design and engineer and we create our own learning algorithms, we create machines, because what I was trying to say earlier is that I believe that for us to create artificial life, it's not going to come by man designing bit by bit, circuit by circuit, a sentient, living, sentient, self-aware being. What I think would happen is that man designs bit by bit, circuit by circuit, a learning, evolving machine that learns and evolves and adapts and increases in complexity on its own. So here's the question. So when we call it artificial life, a designing machine that increases complexity on its own, is it artificial, or are we really the conduits? Are we really the vector as man and our design and designing the seed, a learning algorithm? Are we a vector of the natural process that produced us? So is it really artificial? I say this to say, is it really artificial, or are we the vector of a natural force, of a pre-existing natural force? Now we want to get spiritual. That pre-existing natural force, what is it? God, So is what we consider, if we were to create artificial life, artificial intelligence, artificial sentience, is it really artificial? So, is it artificial, or are we the vector? Are we the vector, the channel of a natural force, the same natural force that created us, and we're the channel, and our creations are extensions of that original natural force. So, So now as we advance, technologically speaking, we recreate ourselves, with machines. The machines take on the burdens or augment our intelligence. They augment our process. And they augmented us physically. Man in the very beginning began to use tools and begin to struggle with matter around him to augment himself. To augment what what we were born with. The difference, the moment we started using tools, the tools then start to hasten and enhance our evolution, our use of tools. And now we're using tools to augment our thinking, tools to augment our internal organs, tools to augment basically everything we do. We use machines, we create tools to do better. So can machines augment our feelings? Can machines augment our perception? There's some schools of thought where, that I subscribe to personally, that, we are all manifestations of the cosmic divine. And for the cosmic divine to perceive itself, we are part of that. It divides to know itself. So will we do the same thing when we create machines and robots, sentient, cognizant, sentient machines to help know ourselves, to observe us? You learn a lot about yourself just using a camera, talking on a video camera, and you get to see your facial expressions and hear your own voice, and you know yourself with this machine. So will we create machines, sentient machines, to know ourselves? So at that point, artificial. Are they artificial life? Or are they just life? Is it artificial intelligence? Or is it just intelligence? Really, there are some people that believe that we are creations of other beings, that we can get into that. So, but back to robots, aliens, and artificial intelligence. So already, recently, NASA released the rover on Mars has discovered signs of flowing water, more and more signs of flowing water. We send our robots, even though the robot is an avatar, it's remote control, it's a representation, it's not sentient, it's not conscious, but we send our robots, our avatars, into space. So at some point in time, they're remote control, but they do have small decision-making abilities. And I think it's predictable that as we advance, our machines will advance. And I personally believe, some people don't believe it's possible for thinking, sentient, self-aware machines. I think not only do I think it's possible, but I believe the prediction is out. And because YouTube, the video's out there forever, and when it happens, you'll hear me saying this, like that guy and about 1,000 other people were ahead of his time, or 10,000. I don't know how many people believe in the evolution, believe in the possibility of artificial sentience, but I definitely do. I think it's a matter of time. In fact, I'm looking forward to seeing artificial sentience in my lifetime. Before I die, I'm looking forward to seeing artificial sentience. So, if we can do it, when we do it, a civilization that's out there, that's been out there for longer than us, that's been at it for longer than us, they've done it already. They've done it already. So, one line of thinking too is that, any radio communications that we receive that have come from, thousands, 10,000s of light years away, that these civilizations are 10,000 years or so many more, tens of thousands of years advanced in us. They've already done it. So if we were to encounter these beings, that we would first encounter their emissaries, their creations, their robots. The same way we send robots into space, they've sent robots into space. What if they're sending, just like I say that the way that when we create sentience, I don't necessarily believe that we will logically engineer and wire every wire of a computational sentience, but that instead we will create learning, adapting machines, learning, adapting components that will learn and adapt and evolve sentience in that process. So, our alien counterparts that are 10,000s, millennia years older than us, more sophisticated, smarter than us, why could they not do the same? They send into space, a seed that evolves and adapts and assembles from materials and seeks and assembles from materials and increases in complexity. And we encounter its sentient emissaries. There are so many possibilities. So, okay, our aliens could send robots into space. All right. Now, what if aliens, they're already here. We're experimenting with biological computing, where we take nerve cells and create logic structures, OR gates, AND gates, etc., out of neurons, out of actual living neurons. So what if the aliens have mastered biological computing, biological engineering, and their artificial life are actually beings? Okay, we've already, it can be arguable. Let's say if it's a construction, a quote artificial life construction, it's made out of silicon and, silicon based. Okay, what's the difference between the silicon based organism that was constructed by another organism versus a silicon organism that evolved because the silicon organism that was constructed may not have been constructed, but it was a seed, some sort of seed was created, and that seed evolved. Now, what if that seed was created at a very molecular level, or at an atomic level even, that evolutionary seed? And what if the organism, the creator's time span is much longer? So who's to say that our own experience, organic experience, that 100 million years is the lifespan of a greater organism, of another organism, of an alien. So we could be the sentient creation of I mean, there are people that say that, you know, but a lot is left to the imagination. I mean, so when we have our extraterrestrial encounter, we could encounter robots as in machines that we recognize as machines, you know, we recognize as constructs. We could have contact with beings or entities that we recognize as organic, we appraise as organic, but they are actually constructs. We could be the constructs. You know, the aliens may have figured out that they don't have to physically travel, that they may, of course, even Star Trek and Star Wars, they talk about warp speeds and wormholes and traveling through holes in the space-time fabric, and, you know, maybe they figured out how to communicate hyperdimensionally, and, you know, but the bigger perspective is not so much the concepts of encountering first contact being made with alien robots. Again, the bigger picture here is that we open our minds and our imaginations to reality, to probabilities and possibilities, and that we not be constrained, our imaginations are not constrained by we've seen, what we see and what we've seen. That, because in our time, in mankind's time, today's reality, try explaining a cell phone. Like, can you imagine explaining a cell phone to someone 200 years ago? A cell phone. It's everyday to us, no big deal. We use it all the time. Explain a cell phone to someone 200 years ago. Explain the internet to someone 200 years ago. Explain, your laptop to someone 200 years ago. Explain a heart transplant to someone or a liver transplant to someone 200 years ago. You know? So think of the realities and the possibilities. Explain, there's a lot of stuff you try explaining to someone 200, 300 years ago, they're not going to be able to understand. Nothing around them has prepared them. Only the most imaginative and only the most open-minded would be able to understand today's reality that is now accepted hard, cold fact. So think of all the things, the realities that exist, that you're going to have to really open your mind to understand. So, back to aliens, robots, artificial intelligence. If you believe in artificial intelligence, the possibility of artificial sentience, and if you believe, if you're willing to believe, able to believe the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence, then it's easy to conceive that first contact would probably more than likely be made with constructs, with robots, whatever you want to call them. Artificial life, artificial intelligence, robots, constructs, androids, whatever. And what's crazy, have your people get with my people. It'll probably be our robots and our constructs. If the first contact takes place into space, it'll be our robots and our constructs meets the alien robots and the alien constructs. Constructs meeting constructs. And what's also interesting, imagine our construct, sentient construct. There's several possibilities, probabilities, and if you believe in multiple universes, each one of these possibilities and probabilities exist. But imagine if our constructs, they've traveled for so long, maybe generations, and they don't remember who we are. They've forgotten us. They just know that they're out there and they're on their day-to-day survival. And space may be to them the way the earth is to us, you know. And they come across these other constructs who may or may not remember their makers. And there they are, you know. And just as we may have forgotten our makers, we may be constructs again, you know, and have forgotten our makers, you know. I always wondered when I was a kid, I used to question the whole the Judeo-Christian concept of God. And I didn't want to couple, so people say our creator is omnipotent. I was hesitant to couple. I didn't take it for granted that it's possible that maybe our creator is not necessarily omnipotent. Maybe our creator has a creator. You know, if we have a creator, maybe our creator has a creator. You know, so that's heretical in some circles. But again, keep your imagination open. You know, even if you're just conceiving, even if all this thought and all this talk just boils down to the plot of a science fiction movie, that you can be the most Bible thumping, hardcore Christian and still enjoy a very fantastical sci-fi movie. So, aliens, robots, artificial intelligence, again, just opening the floor to discussion, opening the floor to imagination, opening the floor to questions, opening the floor to answers. Sign it in the comments form below. I want to hear your questions. I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your feedback. Will first contact be with alien robots? Cosmic Mystic signing out.